Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Shakur Stevenson, reigning WBC lightweight champion, took to his social media and said, February 22nd, belt to ass. Make sure y'all tune in. Watch me beat on Kid Austin like he stole something. Vintage Shakur is back.
Vintage Shakur.
So are we talking about the Shakur Stevenson that we saw against Jamel Herring some fights and some time ago? The Shakur Stevenson that we saw against Yoshino?
Vintage Shakur.
Shakur is widely favored to win this fight because young Floyd Schofield has not yet had the opportunity to fight fighters on the level of the guy Shakur has fought, let alone Shakur. That Floyd Schofield is very much a greenhorn going into this thing, which begs the question, then why is he doing it?
Why?
5 years younger than Shakur Stevenson. Floyd Schofield is 22, Shakur is 27. Floyd Schofield is an orthodox fighter, where Shakur is a southpaw. Floyd Schofield has almost as many fights as Shakur at 18-0 to Shakur, who's 22-0.
Levels.
There's more to boxing than what you see on paper. The fighters that Shakur has fought so far are many levels above the fighters that Floyd has fought so far. You're talking about a champion in Jamel Herring, another one in Oscar Valdez,
Very big, strong lightweight in Nicotila, another one in Edwin De Los Santos.
I know that may not seem like much, but when you compare it to what Floyd has done so far, it's actually a lot.
Then why is Floyd doing this?
Why is he taking on a fight that so many people feel he's not ready for? And the short answer is the money. The money's got a lot to do with it, that you're getting a Riyadh season purse, Riyadh season money.
No pressure.
Floyd Schofield can go in there against Shakur in February and lose every single round. No one will be surprised. There's no pressure on him going in. All the pressure is on Shakur.
Because he's the Olympian, he's the 3-division champion, the defending champion going in, the betting favorite. All the pressure is on Shakur to perform.
Now, the reason to do it, for Floyd, you're getting Riyadh season money under no pressure. If you lose, it's not a big deal.
You're young.
22 years old. At that age, there's no shame in losing to a Shakur Stevenson. Simultaneously, you're upstaging the other fighters that don't want to fight him, like Gervonta Davis, like William Zepeda,
Frank Martin, Isaac Cruz.
Teofimo Lopez said that he would never fight Shakur Stevenson. Well, Floyd Schofield is willing. Floyd Schofield is going to. So what does that say about Teofimo?
And what does that say about Floyd?
Floyd Schofield, who boxed 4 times last year and 2 times this one, there's no pressure on Floyd going in. All he really has to do is go in there, give a good account of himself, and if he loses, it's not a big deal. He makes a lot of money in the process, and that will help to amplify his profile against Shakur Stevenson, who is not a knockout merchant. He's not a knockout puncher.
They're telling themselves we lose a points decision to this safety-first fighter. Big deal. All the pressure's on him anyway.
And that's the caveat for Shakur. You can hardly blame him for fighting someone as inexperienced as Floyd Schofield, because that's not who he was supposed to be fighting. He was supposed to be fighting William Zepeda.
But William is quote-unquote injured.
Floyd Schofield and his father are the ones who started piping up. They're the ones that said they wanted this. And if Shakur didn't oblige them, what would the story be then?
Shakur is ducking Floyd!
So you can hardly fault Shakur for giving them what they want. But the caveat is, you've got to go in there and look good. Damn good. Because you're the betting favorite. You're the more accomplished fighter and the more experienced fighter. So against the Floyd Schofield, if you can't turn in a stellar performance, no, it's not enough to just win. That's what you did with Edwin De Los Santos. That's what you did with Nick Attila.
Just win.
Just enough to win. Against a greenhorn like this, you've got to razzle-dazzle him. You've got to turn in a great performance. All the pressure is on Shakur.
Now, this isn't a Matchroom show per se, but this will be Shakur's first fight as a Matchroom fighter since pairing up with Eddie Hearns.
I remember hearing that it's a 2-fight deal, 2-fight engagement. Who will the second fight of the deal be? Presumably William Zepeda, but we'll see.
If he doesn't find a way out again.
What can we expect from Stevenson versus Schofield? How is that fight going to look?
Uneducated pressure.
Uneducated pressure and aggression from Floyd Schofield is going to get him countered. It's going to get him countered quite often in the opening stanza, to the point where in the middle, he's going to become hesitant, try to pick his moments with Shakur, and try to win a boxing match.
Shakur is a characteristically safety-first fighter, so he's going to take the openings.
But he won't be overzealous. He won't be greedy with those opportunities. I could see Floyd Schofield getting dropped. I could see him getting knocked down, but I don't know about getting knocked out. Shakur Stevenson just isn't a knockout merchant. He's not the strongest finisher.
Shakur on points, conservatively, is the logical way to go.
Didn't need me to tell you that, but as far as the fight's aesthetic, I expect Floyd Schofield to come out hot and heavy, guns blazing at the start, pay for it, then become hesitant as the fight progresses for fear of being hit.
Being countered.
That's going to simmer him down. Further allow Shakur Stevenson to assume control of the fight and win a points decision the way he always does, moving and pot-shotting and fighting from a safe distance.
That's what we can expect in February.
Over to the light heavyweight contest set to go down on that same show. Unbeaten up-and-comer Joshua Buatsi will take on former champion Callum Smith in a fight that I think is a lot dicier and harder to predict than the one we just talked about. Joshua Buatsi, there was a lot of buzz around this guy around the time that he went pro out of the amateurs. I don't think he's lived up to those expectations. Who's the best guy that he fought?
Craig Spider Richards?
For perspective, Joshua Buatsi is older than Shakur Stevenson.
Yeah.
And a lot less accomplished. He hasn't even fought for a full title yet. This is a step up for him.
He's an Olympian.
You expect a lot more from those amateur standouts, those Olympians like Joshua Buatsi, than you do from your run-of-the-mill boxer. This fight is for a WBO interim title. Whoever wins this becomes the mandatory challenger for the winner of Better Beef versus Bivol.
Though not at the top of the queue.
At the very top of the queue will be the winner of Benavidez versus Morel. They'll be the mandatory challenger via the WBC and the WBA.
What about the IBF?
I remember over a year ago, Germany's own Michael Eifert fought former champion Jean Pascal for IBF mandatory status, and he got it, but we haven't heard a lot from that guy.
Or the IBF.
Based on the order that each of these fighters became or are set to become mandatories, Michael should actually be in the front, but like I said, we haven't heard a lot from Michael or the IBF. As it pertains to the WBO and this fight, Joshua Buatsi sports a professional record of 19 wins with no losses, no draws, 13 knockouts.
Unblemished.
And untested, in my humble opinion. Being honest with you, I haven't been overly impressed with Joshua Buatsi. Whether you're talking about the Craig Spider Richards fight or the more recent Dan Aziz fight, the even more recent Willie Hutchinson fight.
I'm not impressed.
Joshua Buatsi's best punches are his straight punches. When he can get full extension on the arm, he generates good power.
Good.
Wouldn't call it great. More of a mid-range to outside fighter than a mid-range to inside fighter.
That's important.
Callum Smith, the more experienced fighter of the two, the more statuesque fighter of the two, long and limber, even as far as light heavyweights go.
30 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 22 knockouts, having been knocked out once, just once, in 32 professional bouts, and there's no shame in that. The guy who knocked him out is Artur Beterbiev.
And it took Artur 7 rounds to do it. How many rounds will it take Joshua Buatsi if he even can knock out Callum Smith? For me and my money, I think that Callum Smith, at light heavyweight, is a more devastating puncher than Joshua Buatsi. You heard that right. I think if you put the Lenin Castillo that Callum Smith knocked out in front of Joshua Buatsi, Joshua don't knock him out. It goes to a decision, like the Craig Richards fight did.
I don't think Joshua punches as hard as Callum Smith.
Long distance or short range, whether you're talking about Callum Smith's right hand or his short left hook,
I think he punches harder.
Callum's Achilles heel has been close quarters fighters, guys who put pressure on him and get all in his wheelhouse. Whether it's John Ryder or Canelo Alvarez or Artur Beterbiev, Callum's not that good within close quarters. But Joshua Buatsi is not a close quarters fighter. I just told you. He's more of a mid-range to outside fighter than a mid-range to inside fighter. He's not really an inside guy, and he's certainly not a pressure guy.
Doesn't have a pressure guy's range or work rate.
I think he has a suspect engine. I think he has a suspect chin. So I remember in the Willie Hutchinson fight that he had Willie hurt once or twice, but he couldn't finish him. And I remember towards the end, he was kind of losing his shape there. He looked tired.
I remember that he only won it via a split decision.
So you're not really head and shoulders above a Willie Hutchinson, and thus, I definitely don't think you're head and shoulders above a Callum Smith.
Joshua Buatsi is still trained by Virgil Hunter. Callum Smith confirmed he's still trained by Buddy McGirt.
I think Callum has the stronger corner.
Do you think Joshua Buatsi's about to get found out?
I think it's a distinct possibility. I think Callum Smith can take Joshua's right hand better than Joshua can take his.
And his left hook.
I don't think Joshua Buatsi has the ingredients, the temperance, or the work rate to fluster Callum Smith the way some other fighters have. I feel like Joshua Buatsi, he's going to give him the room he needs to get off those big punches.
To get full extension on the arm.
It's a very interesting fight. Much harder to call than the one that we just talked about, but I am leaning a bit towards Callum Smith on this one. Callum has proven himself a devastating puncher at light heavyweight. I think much more devastating than Joshua Buatsi, and he is the more experienced fighter of the two. He's been in there with Canelo. He's been in there with Artur Beterbiev. You're telling yourself, well, those are just fights that he lost.
I'd wager he learned more from losing those fights than Joshua Buatsi learned from winning any of his, because who has he fought?
Slight edge to the Liverpudlian. Slight edge to Callum Smith. Finally, in men's heavyweight news, Teddy Atlas says Oleksandr Usyk is one of the great winners of our era. Veteran trainer and broadcaster Teddy Atlas believes Oleksandr Usyk could have held his own with any heavyweight in history. Atlas was ringside in Riyadh in Saudi to see Usyk once more defeat Tyson Fury via a decision. And when asked by pro boxing fans whether Usyk deserved to be ranked alongside the division's immortals, Atlas said he's earned the right to be mentioned with all the top guys. He's one of the great winners of our era, and the funny thing is, there's not one thing about him where you can say, oh my god, he's so great, he's the greatest puncher, he's fast like Ali. No, but there's not one thing he doesn't do really well. He does everything real well. He doesn't have one weakness, and the most important thing is, at the end of the day, the strongest part of him is the mental part. He's always in charge of himself. Always. Atlas also said the potential Fury versus Anthony Joshua fight has lost its zing. It's lost its luster. If it were to be made next year, with both coming off defeats, Atlas believed the 36-year-old Fury was better last night than he'd been when he faced Usyk in May, but it still was not enough. I thought Tyson would be better, and he was better. Give him credit for that, Atlas said. Instead of just moving around the ring and letting Usyk boil him down with the pressure, like he did the first time, he used the wingspan, he said himself. He made Usyk earn his way in. He wasn't pushed all over the ring, and that's what wears you down. Fury, to his credit, did a much better job, albeit by losing by a wider margin.
So now Teddy Atlas believes that Oleksandr Usyk would be able to handle himself and hang with the best of them in any era of heavyweight boxing. What do I think about that?
I agree because there's some things about Oleksandr Usyk that people don't factor into the equation.
What?
In this era of heavyweights, he may seem smaller than everybody else, but he actually stands in at about 6'3". That's the same height as Muhammad Ali.
The same height as George Foreman.
In previous eras of boxing, Oleksandr Usyk would not be a small fry the way he is today. Now, I've seen rumblings in some circles from those who don't like the idea that Oleksandr Usyk in just a little over 20 fights may have achieved all-time great status. They don't like the idea that his name might be synonymous with names like Lennox Lewis,
That he's cut from the same cloth as they are.
Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe. There are those who are chalking up that notion to recency bias, that people are only saying this because the Fury fights are still fresh in their minds. But let me remind you of something.
As great as those all-time greats were, Lennox Lewis got beat by a journeyman in Oliver McCall, and another one in Hasim Rahman. And I understand that he avenged every loss he suffered, but that doesn't change that he suffered them.
He lost to two journeymen, Evander Holyfield, a cruiserweight who moved up in weight like Oleksandr Usyk.
He lost to a light heavyweight who moved up in weight in Michael Moorer.
As great as the all-time greats were, they were not invincible. They were not perfect, that you are now holding Oleksandr Usyk to some kind of standard like he has to be when they weren't.
Evander Holyfield lost to a light heavyweight who moved up in weight in Michael Moorer because that's what Michael was, and Michael lost to a 45-year-old George Foreman.
So when you tell the story of these all-time greats, tell the whole story, why don't you?
Without rose-tinted lenses, I think Usyk would fit right into any era.
We know that Usyk is a consummate professional that goes about his business without any of the discipline issues that Riddick Bowe had. Because he had them. He had a ticker problem. The average content creator here today, the average boxing fan that might rally against the notion that Usyk is cut from the same cloth as those fighters, likely wasn't watching boxing when those fighters were boxing, but I was.
So don't tell me Usyk couldn't hang with them.
Or that he couldn't hang with Larry Holmes. Larry was an all-time great in his own right, but Larry also went the distance. Not once, but twice. With a light heavyweight. A light heavyweight who moved up in weight in Michael Spinks the Jinx.
Usyk would absolutely be able to hang with the both of them. Are you kidding?
The all-time greats you often hear about, those all-time greats, they definitely are great, but what they're not is invincible. What they're not is perfect. So don't hold Usyk to some kind of standard where he has to be. He's found nothing but success as a cruiserweight and nothing but success as a heavyweight against bigger, much bigger heavyweights than yesterday's heavyweights.
It's no easy task.
So when Teddy Atlas says that he would be able to hang in any era of heavyweights, while I don't often agree with things Teddy says, I do agree with that. You could put Usyk in any era and he would be competitive. He would win a title.
I think what it is people just don't like being wrong. So many people in this part of the world drunk the Kool-Aid on Tyson Fury.
It's what I always tell you. For most of this guy's career, they were not paying attention. They don't start paying attention until 2018 when he boxes Deontay Wilder. Then all of a sudden, they formulate this grandiose opinion about that fighter they know nothing about. So that when he beats Wilder, they think he's the best thing since sliced bread.
They think he beats everybody.
Where I never thought Fury would beat Usyk. So if you're shading him now, it's only because he proved you wrong.
You thought that Fury was the best in show.
Usyk is the premier heavyweight of this era, and he's proved that. And in doing that, he's an all-time great.